Great, great. Some of you may have seen us sort of thrashing around a bit earlier. Unfortunately, our original chair went to the wrong venue. So, unfortunately, no, I'm kidding. No, sorry. She's actually unwell, but so we're stepping in a bit. We were angling for a bit of diversity, but sadly, it's just not going to happen. So, thank you for coming to #Value of Social Media, which we think, and you can tell from the room, is a very interesting and important topic, both from a business development perspective, compliance perspective, and also just general communication perspective, because it's obviously a very important part of our lives now. Very delighted to be joined by Craig, Ashley, and Dylan, who all have very unique insights into the different powers and challenges that social media has for business, and also they have a lot of experience working with insurance. So that should be some really interesting insight for everybody. My name is Sebastian. I'm the Managing Director of Market Minds. We're a consultancy and events business working in the insurance market, mainly focusing on insurtech initiatives and helping insurance companies engage with innovation strategy. So I'm just going to very quickly ask Dylan if you could start just a quick intro, who you are, where you come from, and why you're here, and what you're doing with social media currently.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dylan, founder of Social. We're an MGA, and we've redesigned insurance to be consumer-centric. What does that mean? If you have a claim, it's an amazing experience, and if you don't, you get rewarded. And you can get up to 80% money back every year if you and your friends don't claim. And we started with mobile phones, but our model is applicable across consumer lines. And I can see the underwriters in the room going, "Ooh, how does that work?" It does. So we're a consumer, and foremost consumer brand, but we do actually also serve corporates, because our proposition is actually amazing for companies for their mobile phone insurance, because it's not only an employee cost-saving tool, but it's also an employee engagement tool. So go to the website for more information on that. So we use social media as part of our overall marketing strategy, and both in several aspects. The acquisition is one of them, but also engagement and communication and engaging in conversation with our customers. And that's across it can be across your customer experience, not just around discovery of your brand, but also be about fulfilling your claims, or answering any questions you might have along the way as your customer journey. I suppose the headlines I'd say is every channel is very specific, and for not only a demographic but also a mindset. So if you think about it, if you're on Facebook, your mindset is very different to when you're actually on LinkedIn, and so those would be very different messages which are going to have to be communicated to engage the reader. So there's no golden bullet in any one of these channels. It's just hard graft work of actually figuring out what is the core messaging that you have that's specific to you, which actually is going to be resonating with your end customer. So understanding your end customer is number one aspect. And we're doing mobile phone insurance, but if there's 48 million people in the UK with mobile phone insurance, so it's not going to be targeting that is not very viable. So you've got to be very clear on what you start with. What I'd say also is, so it's partly on acquisition, but also on engaging. So that's just across the customer experience. So if you think about it, it's not just around are you able to find out more about the proposition, but also where you're on your claim process, and finally, it can also be about any conflict resolution that you might be having. And I think on that point is actually quite an important one, because I think that's where the foe comes in. What we've actually found is that social media is a delightful tool for fraudsters, because they know it's important for brands to have good reviews, and so what they will do is actually throw in really nasty reviews to try and get away with the murder they're trying to commit. And it's a tough situation. That's interestingly enough, I think the trust, the likes of Trustpilot and other type of reviewing sites are becoming more aware of this. But it is something to be aware of, is as when you start being online, you're kind of exposed. And so it is understanding how you're going to be managing that and there might be some genuine times when you just, the process isn't as slick as you have designed it for it to be. But it's also being mindful that in an area where there is fraud, especially consumer lines, and we're doing mobile phone insurance, so it's rife. We're very mindful, actually, kind of detecting it and deterring it. But some people will try and try their luck. So I think that's where the faux element comes in.
Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah, Ashley Spooner from Brand Experience. So the reason why we're here is we're a full-service agency, primarily based up in Norwich, work across the really quite specialised in the insurance sector, so that's anything from brokers to underwriters, the whole kit and caboodle. And I personally have been working in social media for pretty much ever since it started.
When did it start, actually?
When did it start? Well, it must be 20 years ago, because I've been doing this for about 20 years, 20, 15. Don't ask me questions about age.
Noted.
It was like when it was called like Web 2.0. That was one of my first roles, was head of Web 2.0.
Right.
Yeah, so I'd totally echo what Dylan has just said there. We would see that social media plays a part of someone's marketing mix, but we probably don't see it as, in this industry specifically, as working on its own. So where you might be able to launch a business or whatever purely on social media, we would definitely see it in some sectors as an element for which you probably need to have a strategy, which I think you're going to talk about. But that strategy for your social media, which channels work well for you and what the audience is on the specific channel, but it is a strategy that would need to fit in, and it works best when it works in, I don't know what the word is here, but it's very much a good fit for the rest of the strategy. And that's true of all of the clients we work with, and that can be insurance, that can be not-for-profit, that can be retail, that can be education, that can be religion. So if you think the FCA are sort of hard taskmasters, you wait until you start working with the Church of England, because they are answering to a different master.
Well, that is the idea, I think. Yeah. Craig?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've been working in this industry specifically for about 11 years. I'm from Full Circle Communications, and we deal with the corporate communications side within, again, the kind of financial services sector, a bit wider, but very kind of focused on insurance. And we've got a number of clients in this room that we've worked with, and we've got a presence in here as well, working with the MGAA for a number of years. And I think I remember when I first started working in this sector, I worked in the alcohol sector before this, so moving over to insurance was a perfect fit. The first kind of conversations we had, we were doing some lunch and learns with brokers, and I kind of ran this whole 45-minute session, very young and enthusiastic, and these brokers at the end of it said, "That's great, but I'm not going to do it." I was like, "Well, why not?" They said, because I just want to bury my head in the sand. I don't want to know what people are saying about us. I don't want to have to deal with that. I don't want to be there. And we've still got clients saying the same thing 11 years later. And I think, as Ashley said, it's the strategic point of view that's coming into play now, that social media has been touted as, and I think Dylan used the phrase, the golden bullet. It's still seen as, if we can get on Twitter, if we can get 1,000 followers on Facebook, it's going to grow our business. And a lot of the time it's not. And a lot of the time you're going to spend a lot of time, a lot of effort and a lot of resources on something that's never going to be right for your target audience. And I think this is where the kind of work that we're doing, and probably why a lot of you are in this room, is trying to understand how you actually use it. And this bit that Ashley talks about, strategy, and that's kind of where we're looking at it now, because there's so many businesses jumping to execution. We're saying, we just need to get on it. We just need to start writing content. We just need to start tweeting. And you do it, and it might work. And you might get someone that's lucky, and they go, "Oh, yeah, okay, I remember that you're there now. I want to come back and read something else," and that's fine. But it's very unlikely to work, unless you've really thought about who are we, what do we stand for, what do we sell, who do we sell it to, and what role does this as a channel play? And usually the social part is there for not selling, like Dylan has proven that you can, but a lot of the people in this room, it's going to be more at the corporate end, and it's there as that touch point. It's a way of reaching your audience. It's a way of reminding them who you are and what you do, celebrating the good news stories, defending the negative ones. And then the rest of it is how it plays in that wider mix. So how are you using it alongside email? How are you using it alongside promoted activity? How are you using it alongside your PR? And I'm sure some of you have questions that we can answer and go into a bit of detail as a panel to kind of give you some solutions on that. But it's very much that target piece. Understand your market, understand your reasons for being on it, and then start thinking about which channel and what the content's likely to be.
Thank you very much, all of you. And speaking of which, we have to slightly practice what we preach here. So I hope everyone's tweeting at UK MGAA. So if anyone's not, they really should be. To understand the power of social media. And we've got Slido here, which is it's on your web tool. It's not actually an app. If you go on www.slido.com, hashtag MGAA 2018, you can just submit questions to the panel and we can answer anything that you have. Some of them we've actually already had pre-submitted, which is social media a friend or foe for insurance? Oh, that's a poll. Sorry. Sorry about that. So we've got a poll. Is social media a friend or foe? So please go on Slido and let us know what you think, and then we can actually show the results later on.
Seb, you use social media. How do you use it?
Very badly and quite erratically, but it seems to work. No, I found, well, actually some stats. I did a bit of research earlier, and I was actually pretty amazed about the statistics on social media. So I found 330 million monthly users are on Twitter, which is pretty amazing. LinkedIn, 500 million, and Instagram, 1 billion. And Facebook, of course, owns Instagram, and they have 2.19 billion monthly users. And in total, that's about 3 billion users in total monthly using social media, which is absolutely incredible. And we've got a database of 1 million people, and we basically we send a lot of newsletters and that sort of thing. But actually, our traction with social media is so much better. Because you can engage with conversations, tag other people's work, intelligent people with thought-provoking content. You can tag that and claim it as your own, which is just great. But really, the point is that you can really engage your target market in the messages that they want, and also sort of associate yourself with that. And I find that is way more effective than just punching out emails to a database. So I sort of think that actually email and that sort of communication is slightly sort of passé, 2.0, as you were saying, and the future of communication, both business and socially, is entirely social media and online.
I think I'd agree with that, and I think a big part of that is partly understanding the platforms, and I think a lot of what you're talking about there is that kind of push messaging. So you're pushing content out by email, you're doing the same thing by social, and I think it's recognising, and Dylan talked about that word engagement, what is going to engage, and actually in this space there's a lot of brands broadcasting. And I think that's where the change is coming, is it's recognising that this is an audience-led platform, and the word social isn't there by mistake. You wouldn't go down the pub and just stand on a chair and shout at everyone, or you might if you weren't happy with the result, depending on your personality. But you would go and have a conversation. You'd listen to other people's point of view. You'd pick up on the cues when they were interested, when they were sitting forward, when they were buying you another pint because they wanted you to stay. And I think it's trying to use social that way as a business and recognise that your end customer or the end kind of audience that you're trying to reach don't all think the way that you do. They don't all think the same. And it's using that to kind of say, right, yeah, here is this influencer that they're engaging with. So we can use that. We can put our own message over the top of it. We can spin it our way. And we can take a bit of ownership of that conversation, a bit of ownership of that traffic. you have to be smart with that. And I think it's not that you can't just have the 22-year-old in the corner of the office who manages your social channels. They're not going to understand the depth of conversation they could have. This has got to be a business-wide platform that has a customer services angle, has a marketing angle, has a communications angle, and everything else in between.
So as part of a sort of broader customer engagement piece, that actually, as you were saying, isn't just, so-and-so in marketing just having a crack. You really need to have a proper strategy. And with insurers, we always talk about how insurers don't know who their customers are and blah, blah, blah. So working with insurance companies, actually, have you found that's been a challenge, actually trying to help them identify who their customers are?
Well, I mean, the first challenge with a lot of them but that's true of a lot of big-ish companies, is the fear that someone's going to say something wrong or controversial on social media, and the bad press that will rain down on them as a result of that. And I think that is largely because it's a regulated industry, and they will have read in the newspaper, they've seen lots and lots of horror stories where someone's said the wrong thing or something out of context, and they've just got absolutely pillared for it. But that's the way to overcome that, is like Craig says, is to have someone who does it for you, rather than an add-on to their job or the office junior, someone who understands the potential for that damage. And then you can avoid it. It is relatively straightforward not to get drunk and start tweeting out your brands. That's just, and you can have guidelines and policies that, as long as you're familiar with them, you know what you can say and you can't say. So it's relatively easy. It is a fear, but it's relatively easy to get over. And then you need to encourage them to understand that, like you just said, that it's not just a broadcast. It's not like email where you're just sending it out. This is one of the key metrics that we'd use and we'd measure for any clients is the engagement rate, rather than the reach or the number of followers they've got, because that's the sort of number they'll report back to their MD or chair, but actually it's the engagement that they've had and the sort of conversations that they may have had. And you can take those offline if you want to get really into the nitty-gritty about it, so telephone numbers or emails, that sort of thing can be exchanged, and that to us would be a key. That's the key for us, is that engagement piece.
There are two things I'd like to add on this. I'm not sure social media is the future only, and I think we discussed about kind of a holistic approach to marketing. I think that's a very important aspect. Right now, email, which kind of we're just done with all those kind of newsletters that we've pseudo signed up to, and get not yours, Jane, you're great. But I think just getting all those kind of inbound mailings, which are often not very relevant and not particularly pertinent to the point and place where you're at. And I think that's something which will probably evolve over time. But what I find quite interesting is that, direct mail, those leaflets in the door, like 20 years ago, they were just like, you just would automatically take that kind of bunch straight into the bin. And now, because it's not used that much, it's actually a very effective tool. And so I think there are cycles for different platforms. And I think social media at the moment is kind of in its infancy, and we're not at saturation yet. But there's going to be a point where we're just so fed up of having ads on our different mediums. We'll be fed up of all this kind of content overload, and then there'll be some other kind of new wave that will be coming through. And so I think that's kind of a thought on from that perspective. And I had a second point, but I've just completely forgotten.
Dylan, do you think you would have do you think your business would be able to be where it is today without current social media presence in the way it is? And would you like it to double, and how much effect would you think that would have on you?
So, put your hands up if you're actually using social media as part of your organisations right now. Okay, there's a whole bunch of people who are not. Yep. And they've got kind of existing kind of healthy businesses, no doubt. So I don't think it's a kind of a must-have. It is a channel as others are. I think, that's the second point I was wanting to make earlier, is actually the key about it is actually having a holistic view on your customer interactions. And I think that's also one of the fears that people have when they actually have to introduce it. Is that if you start realizing that you've got your LinkedIn, you've got your Twitter, you've got your Insta, your Facebook, you're going to have maybe what we have is kind of the live chats, and then you have all the interactions you might have with your customers when they claim, or have any other interactions that you might have if you're still on paper. How do you bring them all into one single view to be able to make sure the conversation is relevant for the customer in view of what they've had before? And I think there are tools out there which help you do that, but I think that's a pretty important one, where if you don't do that, you're at high risk of having a very kind of effectively kind of schizophrenic conversations with the single customer in a way that actually will put them off more than actually have the desired effect of having an engaged conversation.
So I think it seems that it's, we definitely, the message is, have a clear strategy. It could be very effective, but, it's dangerous out there. What about ROI? What about metric? How do you say that actually we spent all this time and money investing in social media, and, how do you actually, analyse whether or not it's actually been effective?
Yeah, I think on Ashley's point, those kind of the ego-stroking metrics of how many followers and how many impressions are worthless. It's actually much more about, well, why are you on it? And are you trying to grow your business? In which case, how many customers have you acquired through it? How many leads are you generating? How many meetings have you been able to book because of it? And I think it all comes back to your strategy in the first place, and the kind of the marketing speak, which we don't want to do too much of, but kind of fueling the funnel is the big phrase still. And I think that's where social plays a massive role in that, because you've got your awareness driving, and that business broadcasting bit, there is a role for social to play in that, because you still need to get your name out there. It's an increasingly noisy world. Content marketing is still a buzzword. Everyone's creating content. A lot of it is full of disinformation and is not factual, but it's still there, and you've still got to compete with it. So first challenge is drive awareness, and by doing that you do need to think about impressions, and you do need to think about reach, but you've got to then look past that and say, and what's next? Then it's the kind of the consideration element. So how are we proving that people are considering either talking to us as a business, becoming a client or a customer? And that stage is much more, the metrics are around engagement, so clicks. Are they coming through to your website? Are they liking? Are they retweeting? Are they following you? Are they signing up to your email newsletters? And then it's that point of conversion. What does that actually mean? Do they sign up to be a customer? Do they place their insurance with you? Or are they converting into a different way and saying, yeah, I want you to come and meet me, or I want a callback, or I want to download that fact sheet or that white paper, whatever it might be. And it's just, again, kind of really moving that bit through. But one aspect, actually, I'd be interested with Dylan. There's a lot of businesses that have build social very centrally, and they've built referrals as a huge kind of part of that. So not only are you focused on signing people up, but then using them to go out there and be your advocates. And I got an Uber here, and Uber has the very good code, send this off, you get £10 back, and the person you've sent it to gets £10. It's great, and it means that I've probably used that 6-7 times. Is that something you've built into your kind of business model, or thinking about building in?
Well, it's part of our business model. The whole point about you being able to you can get up to 80% money back every year if you and your friends don't claim. And the way it works is you buy a policy, you're covered, and then you can connect to your friends. Every time you connect to a friend, both you and your friend both get £10 added to each of your reward pots. Each one can actually connect to as many people as they want until their reward pot is worth 80% of the value of their premium. At the end of the year, if you and your connections have not claimed, then you get the money back. So it's like a mutual no claims bonus. And that's part of our embedded in our model. Clearly, social media is an effective tool to actually have that sharing. But to be honest, actually, interestingly enough, people share probably more so through other means of communication, whether they're WhatsApp, they're texting, emails, rather than necessarily